Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the HR Fireside Chat. This is your connection point with HR every week. So normally this time is spent giving you timely updates, informing you on anything you need to know. So I do have a couple HR updates for you before we get into, this is our, it is still March, even though it doesn't feel like it. I'm already in April. This is our March Pulse Check, which is my monthly dedication to all of you to stop with the heavy information flow after the quick HR updates and allow us to have a conversation around a topic usually to do with wellness. And today we're going to talk about setting boundaries, and I'm going to share with you guys some information I've pulled together. And then as a collective, I would love to have you guys on mic, throw in chat your ideas, your thoughts, what's working for you, because this is really our thought partners today and how we can create a better work life for everybody on this call. And I'm like super excited. We have 57 folks on this call that are going to participate in this thought experiment that I'm gonna drive today. But first, we've got a couple HR updates. Yesterday, I sent out the Fireside Chat update and from the last 2 weeks. And in there, some of you might have noticed that the state is now asking that we have the respectful workplace as part of a requirement to get CEC. Tiffany Trader, wave to everybody, I won't make you on mic, is our wonderful growth team manager. And her and I are working with DHR to get guidance on what exactly that means. So please stay tuned and don't panic. I promise we will over communicate with you when we have a plan in place. We don't at this exact moment because we're still a little fuzzy about what they're wanting us to do. So please be patient with us as we get as much information as possible. What that did tell you is we do have some guidance on CEC, which is great. It's super confusing. And we've got a team of HR professionals who are working with Budget Office and Mark and Ken Klein, who's the AVP of Budget Office. And we're going to have more information coming shortly. I'm going to make our comp and class manager, Kevin Ross, I don't think he's on the call, but if he is, he should wave, come talk to us about how that CEC process is going to roll out. And to just give you a little bit more information on what comp and class is, because it's confusing. And it's always good to learn more about what HR does, because what we do is fun, but also confusing. Okay, and then last, I've got our monthly DRC meetings. Our welcome team is going to be putting on second Thursday of the first Thursday. It's April. Jordy, help me with the date again.
It'll be Thursday, April 8th at 3 o'clock.
Excellent. We'll have all of our DRCs available to come and talk to us about the offer card and the offer letter. Speaking of which, yours truly is going through all of our welcome communications because we've noticed that there's a plethora of broken links and weird information. So we're going to get those updated, probably not by the 4th, but definitely a work in progress. Okay, that's all I have for updates. If I was too fast on any of that, or you have any questions on anything that I brought up, feel free to throw something in chat. You can send me an email afterwards and we can set up a time to talk. We're really here for you. But to get to our fun topic, I did put together a little slideshow for you guys to follow along. I'm going to share. Thanks for everybody who played on our intro. Gosh, I love these things. Here we go. Okay, we're going to start with some of the basics. Who needs boundaries? I'm going to say everybody does. You just don't know it yet. You don't know what boundaries you need to set, but everybody needs them. Without them, you tend to get taken advantage of, burn out, get stressed, and struggle. So if you don't think you need boundaries, I don't often say this, but you're wrong. I say that to Sean a lot though. I tell him he's wrong quite often. Tiffany laughs. Okay, So I've got some fun quotes on here that are going to also try to this is a really big and universal thing. I will tell you, my first experience with needing boundaries as an adult was in my early 20s when, and I figured out real hard that you are allowed to say no to people as close to you as your parents if it is creating an unhealthy situation. Mara, I'm not talking about mom, so you don't need to go run to her. She's wonderful. But you are allowed to tell somebody as close to you as your children or your parents no if it protects you. And that was my first experience with needing to set boundaries. So that was terrifying. Hopefully nobody else had to experience boundaries as difficult as that. So what are boundaries? Quite simply, they are limits you're going to set with yourself and others to protect yourself. This is your first line of defense of your heart, because you cannot, I love this quote, you cannot simultaneously set a boundary and then take care of another person's feelings. You cannot violate your existence and validate another person. That's self-harm. Don't do it, please. So be thinking about those moments where you're needing to just set those limits to protect yourself. And this is also from yourself. And I say this as a strengths coach. If you know your strengths finder results and you have an achiever or a responsibility in your top 5, you need to do some soul searching on this setting boundaries with yourself. Now, if you have the combination of a responsibility and an achiever, come talk to me. We'll do some coaching. You are a very driven and wonderful person, but you need to understand that you don't have to do it all, and that's okay. And setting boundaries is incredibly important for your own mental well-being. Okay, we're gonna keep moving on. When do you know you need to set boundaries? And this is really going to vary from person to person. And you got to think about these things that really strike at the heart. If you feel resentful, upset, disrespected, taken advantage of, if you're exhausted, if you're fearful, uncomfortable to the point where you just your skin is crawling. If you see that there's a pattern in these feelings, you definitely need to set boundaries. And the queen of emotional intelligence, Brené Brown, tells us, daring to set boundaries is having the courage to love yourself when we risk disappointing others. I'm going to ask a question a little later as we get into these slides that will really help with setting some of these boundaries. But I want you to start thinking about these feelings that you have. If there's fear, if there's resentment, if there's exhaustion, you need to start recognizing these feelings. Where can you apply boundaries? Just about anywhere. But primarily, it's physical boundaries. I'm not physically comfortable with this. Relationships, emotional boundaries, work. Wherever you find that those feelings are creating self-doubt, that tension, that exhaustion, that fear, that's a good sign that you need to set a boundary between you and whatever is coming at you so you can stay healthy. And I always find it really interesting when I coach people who are setting boundaries and they just don't understand why somebody keeps coming at them in the same way. You really need to stop asking that question. Why are they coming at me? And ask, why do you keep allowing it? And if it's a fear that you won't be liked, that's a legitimate fear. That's a fear I deal with all the time. We can talk about that. A fear of disappointing someone, a fear of not being seen as capable. Those are things that you can work out with yourself that will make it healthier for you when setting these boundaries, to acknowledge those fears that you have when setting these boundaries. And last, we're going to talk most about this. How though? I'm going to talk about my favorite thing in the whole world, self-awareness. You got to identify everything first. And that comes from some soul searching, comes from recognizing feelings, validating your feelings. You're not crazy for feeling things. Your feelings are your feelings. And when you identify and have that self-awareness that you need change, that's when it's really important to get curious and ask yourself this: what would change if you say no to something? This is a really important question you need to be asking. What would change if you said no? How would this be different if you said no? So a lot of people say yes, or they don't set boundaries at all because they would just rather be seen as the person that can take care of it. They don't want to let people down. But then they get overburdened, they get stressed out, they get burnout, they get taken advantage of. So if you ask the question, if I say no, what would happen? Think of the worst case scenario. Can you live with that? If the answer is, yeah, it might be a little scary or might suck a little bit, more times than not, we don't even think what would be the worst thing that could happen. If I took the day off, what's the worst thing that could happen? If I say no to joining this project, what's the worst thing that could happen? Chances are nothing. You're going to get a break. You just need to get curious and ask yourself that question. Also, when you're moving forward with actually making these change, set realistic goals. Don't say, I'm going to say no to everything, because you'll burn out the other way. You'll start to feel awful. Start to set a goal to say no to one thing, or to say, I need to think about this. I'm going to say, what would change if I said no to 3 things this week that I'd normally take off my plate? You have to start small. We don't take off as small children running. We start by barely being able to roll over. We build up all of our chubby muscles, and then we start to crawl, and then we start to pull ourselves up. People seem to think that emotional intelligence is this muscle that's just naturally developed in people. It is absolutely not. It starts out just the same as baby pudge. You have to do the work and exercise those muscles. You have to figure out, where does it hurt? Why does it hurt? And get the work in to practice it so you can get good at it. This is why we all suck at saying no. This is why we all suck at people pleasing. This is why we all suck at crucial conversations, because these are things that as a society, we don't work out this baby pudge ever. And then also, the most important step in this is to reward yourself. People don't reward themselves. And then you don't reinforce in your brain that you did a good thing. So if you do all this work, let's go back to my workout metaphor. You do all this work, you run a marathon, and you don't celebrate that. How is that an accomplishment? Adam, you like to go mountain biking and do all the things. How do you reward yourself after a hard day of physical activity? Oh yeah, I'm really waiting for an answer. And yes, I'm picking on my coworkers. No, he went dark on me. Okay, I'll be nice.
I didn't mean to. Sorry, I thought I was turning my mic on. I like to reward myself with a beer.
Nice, yeah.
It sounds funny, but a seltzer or a beer or a glass of wine after I hit the hills hard.
No, that's great. I regularly reward myself for a hard day's work with a glass of red wine. I see nothing wrong with that. Some people do chocolate. Chocolate's good. I said no today. Go bust out a Hershey's bar, because you deserve to know, and your brain deserves to validate the hard work it did. Rewarding yourself and appreciating yourself is an underappreciated trait. This is why people's self-confidence sucks. You got to do the work, because it starts as baby pudge. Okay, I saw this quote, and I want to leave leave or share this with everybody. Walls keep everybody out. Boundaries teach people where the door is. This is the perfect analogy of boundaries. You've done the work, you've set the boundary, and you've shown people how you are willing to be treated, how you are willing to help them. You are helping people. You are wonderful, giving humans. Teach people how you can help them. Teach them how you want to collaborate and build with them. So you're not taken advantage of, you're not burnout, and you can still be your best self and your best teammate by showing them where the door is and by not being taken advantage of. This is my quick little presentation on boundaries. I hope that it has been informative, but really I want to spend the bulk of our time talking about boundaries and how we're setting them between work life and with also the people in our lives so we can be full and more complete and happier people. And this is really hard because I have spent a lot of time watching TED Talk after TED Talk after TED Talk on working from home and setting better boundaries for work-life balance. And like all of them have these tips and hints, but what it all gets down to is it's gonna be personal. It's going to vary from person to person. But it's important for you to do that work and figure out what you need to do to set those boundaries personally. I'm going to include in my recap some great TED Talks that give you tips and tricks for how you can set some like work-life balance stuff. And they're really cute, like dress up for the day and then change at the end of, like, that doesn't work for me. That just adds more laundry to my life. So you have to take some of these things and take it with a grain of salt and ask yourself, okay, so is this worth the energy? I'm going to dress up for the day, so I'm going to feel like I'm working, and then I'm going to take off my work outfit so I know in my brain I've switched off. Or am I going to then go do like 8 loads of laundry? If you're cool with laundry because that's your Zen time, do it. Me, not so much. But other things really do work. Like, okay, so I'm going to set up a really specific morning routine for myself, and I'm not going to start before that routine is finished. And that's what I do. I wake up with my kids, I have a cup of coffee, I get breakfast going, I take my son to daycare, and then my day starts. Having a really good exit to your day is really important too. Some of us really suck at this, and I've been working on it really hard over the year, but it takes time. And you have to also know that some days you're going to have to break your own rules, because the work that you are going to get done after the kids go to bed is going to make tomorrow better. So you're not going to be as stressed out. And then there are going to be days where you're like, nope, I have to clock out because today has been enough and tomorrow the work will be there. Tomorrow the work will be there. That's that question. What would happen if I said no? I do ask myself at the end of the day. That's the question I've started asking. What would happen if I don't work tonight? Okay, I'm gonna have to do it tomorrow. If that's the worst thing that's gonna happen to me, I do it tomorrow. If it's like, oh, I'm gonna have to work late tomorrow, then I might work late that night. So just think about that question. What's the worst thing that would happen if I didn't do it? Yeah, your task list keeps growing. I get that. So sometimes, Jasmine, I do think of this in my head where I'm like, if I do it all, they're just gonna hand me another stack. So I'm gonna go play with my kids because that's the choice I'm gonna make. You gotta be thinking about that. The work will never end. So there's a difference between getting behind and thinking that you have to achieve.
I think it's really just dependent. Sometimes workloads demand more, but yeah. I mean, I think also a lot of areas are dealing with like understaffing and limited capacity. So it's like, yeah, you can push something off until tomorrow, but then there's no one else to do it. So your list just keeps growing, growing, growing. But
so that also comes back to my favorite thing, partnerships. Part of boundaries is also understanding who around you is going to help lift you up, and like identifying your yes, we're understaffed. Yeah, we have a limited capacity on our team. Yeah, our list keeps growing and growing. At what point in time do you take that list to your supervisor? Do you take it to your team and say, I physically cannot produce all of this work in a week. I need help. That's a scary conversation. That's terrifying for a people pleaser. And to a certain extent, everybody on this call are people pleasers, just because we're in this like helping occupation. We enjoy being the person that helps. So being the person that needs help in a helping occupation, acknowledge that that is terrifying. But there's nothing good that can come out of trying to do everything yourself. A rock is heavy by itself. If you have somebody who can help you lift it, yeah. Okay, terrifying, essentially, if you aren't able to do the work at the level that's expected or required. Yes, that's also terrifying. But that requires, this is why the muscle of like conversation is also super atrophied. And it's weird because we are stuck in this virtual space. I'm going to acknowledge a lot of weird things. I'm not going to give a lot of answers. If anybody has something to contribute to how we can do a little bit better, but I want to acknowledge that most of our conversations happen screen to screen. And there's a lot of stuff coming out that we're missing a lot of interpersonal and like some of those social cues that we'd normally get from a in-person conversation. So not only are we living in this world where we have a lot of work to do, and some of the work needs to have a conversation about, I might not be able to produce all of this, but we're having to have the conversation in a place where we don't know if the other person is even like fully looking at our screen. Maybe their camera is set up so they aren't even looking at us. This is hard stuff. So my suggestion, because I do have some, is to preface some of these conversations with, I need your full attention. This is an awkward conversation. I need a little more assistance in this. And when we're talking about doing these tasks that keep growing and growing and growing, and I totally get what you're saying, Jasmine, but we do need to exercise this muscle of bringing these conversations up. Because without it, you're just drowning in the work and you become disengaged. And when you become disengaged and mentally fatigued, thanks, Adam, that was a great word, you become checked out. And when you're checked out, you become disgruntled. And then you can become fearful. Does anybody recognize some of these words? They're all words that are, I said earlier, indicate you need a boundary. So why don't we start where things are uncomfortable? Okay, so this is uncomfortable. Why is this uncomfortable? Let's have a conversation about that. Now, there's a difference between discomfort and like not wanting to do it. Maggie, yes, let's have a conversation. I just talk until people talk to me.
I'll talk at the risk of waking up my baby that finally fell asleep, but we'll see.
Thank you for being a baby.
I was just gonna say, like, a strategy that I kind of use as far as setting boundaries is always asking, like, when do you need this by? Like, there are hard deadlines, and then there are kind of expected, like, oh, I really need this and I think that really helps, because then you know, okay, I have to get this done by this time, or, you know, this thing I kind of have a little more wiggle room on, or if I know, oh shoot, somebody wanted this today and I just can't do it, I can reach out and be like, hey, what, you know, I might not be able to get to this today. Is tomorrow going to work? And so it helps me know how to work through some of those things. And then the other thing I was going to say is, I really appreciate when people have boundaries, because I am someone who's like, I'm going to ask. Like, I will ask for anything. I'll ask I always will ask. And if somebody says no, I can be like, okay. But if you don't have boundaries and you don't say no, then it's like, oh, it's a disservice to both of us.
No,
as somebody who's an asker. And I do in certain situations, if I think like, I don't know if this person has like the room for this. I'm an admin, so I'm not usually like assigning work, right? But even if it's like asking my chair, like, oh, can you do this? If I think like, she's pretty good with boundaries, but if I ever thought maybe this is beyond, I would say, if you can't, let me know. Like that's, I'll kind of like set it up that way, but I'm an asker. So I really appreciate when people have boundaries themselves.
Well, not only that, it teaches you, if you can find somebody who's really good at boundaries and make friends with them, ask them how they set their boundaries, pick their brains, you can emulate some of those that work for yourself. Like you can't take somebody's style and try to make it your style, because you're not them. Don't do that. That's silliness. But take what you enjoy about what they're doing and try to see if it works for you. Try things, get curious, break things. Somebody put something in chat to me privately, and I wanna tell you guys this. And this comes back to some of my culture work that I'm really proud of doing, and this is something that our team is really proud of doing. They said, as I was talking about burnout, and as I'm talking about how the work continues, no one's irreplaceable. The organization will continue no matter what the individual does. The organization will thrive when the individuals take care of themselves and are able to give more to the individual or to the organization. So what this means is there are places where you can go to work and it doesn't matter if you're burned out, it doesn't matter if you're fatigued or fearful, if you're producing the work, they will continue to grind you until you're nothing. We do not want that at Boise State. HR actively works against those cultures. We want instead what the second part of that quote was. Employees who are happy and fulfilled can give more of themselves because they have more of themselves to give, because they are excited to do the work. They're excited to be part of the team. But that takes work to get there. Like, I'm not saying like this just magically happens. It takes a lot of intentionality on building your team, getting to know one another, knowing where you can go to trade tasks that are energy draining and to build each other up. It means when somebody on your team is really, really struggling, you as a collective circle around that person, pull things off their plate, allow them to recover, because they will return the favor tenfold instinctively, because they feel the safety, the security, and just the general heartfeltness to do that. Right, TT? We play that game all the time. All the time. I mean, no team is perfect, but one of the things that we're working so hard is to build a culture where there's openness and honesty and the ability to have these conversations and take part in a workplace where people genuinely care, not only about the work, but about the person doing the work. So Maggie, yes, I love that you have these conversations, because that's a muscle that is completely atrophied. And COVID land has made everybody work real hard on it, and we're still struggling. But I think that it's worth saying, this is going to sound weird, and I don't know if I'm going to fully articulate this, but I need to talk to you about my workload. I need to talk to you about how I can ask for help. I'm getting some other direct messages that are super fun. And I'm getting a couple really fun strengths questions. So I think that I'm going to have to figure out a way to get some strengths finder stuff to this group and back to campus, because I believe I'm still one of 2 coaches on campus. Okay, so what if you're open and honest and the other party misreads what you say and assumes things that you aren't? Oh, that's hard. Misinterpretations are always the worst, aren't they? Because I really do think that most people do start conversations with really positive intent. and then like something happens and like somebody's not looking the right way, or somebody says something just a little weird. I once called a colleague, so I'm going to go back to StrengthsFinder for a second. I had a colleague, we were talking about strengths, and I had a bad word choice. I accidentally called her talent unpopular, and I meant to say uncommon. But that was a really weird moment, and it created a lot of weird tension between us. And for the life of me, I could not like save that moment. And I tried later to kind of poke fun at myself in that moment and try to like build the relationship back, and it didn't work at all. And there was more resentment there. So sometimes even with the best intent to try to rebuild and reconnect, we fall flat. I think we just need to acknowledge that, and it sucks. So what do we keep doing? We just keep trying. We noticed that way did not work. So what I did is I got to know this person a little bit better. They were really, really big on wanting things done and process improvement stuff. And I fixed a process, and I found I was getting respect from her in that way. And I was like, okay, never going to win you back on the StrengthsFinder comment. I might be able to get back in your good graces by producing good work. So if you have weird contention with a person and you need to fix that relationship, there's one of two ways you can do it. You can be really direct, apologize, say, sorry, I need to redirect on that, which is probably the best way to do it. Or then you can really, and then there's the second way, which is to get to know that person and just do right by them by doing the good work around them and with them. You can do both as well, which is cool because there's more than one way to build relationships. There's also probably 1,000,004 ways that you can try to make up for having done something. But to get back to the crux of Marianne's comment, positive intent is so important. So let's say you're on the other side of that and somebody makes a comment and you're like, what did you mean by that? Sometimes you have to, even if you didn't like what was said, you didn't like how it came across, you have to get curious and have the conversation with yourself about where did that come from? Was that did they mean that? And you can stop the conversation and even ask for clarification. That is a muscle almost nobody wants to exercise because it's face threatening. To stop a conversation when somebody has said something that potentially has got all your feathers up and say, hold on, what did you just say there? Almost nobody does that. I didn't this morning in a meeting that but what am I doing instead? I'm gonna have a one-off with that person and be like, okay, we need to get to this. We need to figure out what's going on. I need to figure out why my feathers are ruffled. And that's a productive conversation to have, but you almost always have to assume positive intent. And that's my number one rule when it comes to StrengthsFinders. There's 5 guiding principles of a strengths-based person, and number 3 is positive intent, but I almost say it's the most important because it will help you navigate miscommunications better than anything. And then it can also do this wonderful thing where somebody is that emotional allergy, that person that just kind of grates on your nerves. If you can assume positive intent towards that person and what they're doing, what they're talking about, chances are they'll be less annoying and less grating on you because everybody has something positive to contribute. You just need to do the work to appreciate what they have to contribute. Okay, I've covered a lot here. We came to talk about boundaries. I hope everybody is okay with this line of thought. Y'all gave me a platform. There's 65 of you. I'm just talking with you about some of my favorite things, which are self-awareness, taking care of yourself, and being authentically you. because you guys let me be authentically me every week and just yammer at you. Stephanie is smiling and laughing. That made my day. That's a good question about ombuds for faculty. Is there something similar to staff? Yeah, it's called HR. We're here. We got you. Right, Tiffany? I always think it's funny when people are like, well, we need somebody to talk to. I will say that higher ed's got this funny way with HR. We're a weird HR department in higher ed, by the way. Not all of them do what we do. And it's kind of strange. When you go to the private sector and you work in a different company, HR is like driving culture and there for people. We're your counselors, we're your development, we're your recruiters, we're your guidance, and we really are there. In higher ed, we impose rules and tell you which policies are going to get us sued. We do a lot of weird stuff. This is a weird industry, guys. But what's cool about what our HR is doing is we're emulating some of those more like culture building things. And we're really bringing HR back to what it is. And it's about people and being here for you. So before Sean, and I'm not even saying like the guy before him or the guy before him or the guy before him, but like we just had a more regulatory approach to HR. Since Sean's taken over, he's like, nah, we're about people. And everybody said, yes. And we got to work. And we're not perfect, but we are doing as much as we can. And that's one of the reasons why we started these HR Fireside Chats, is so you guys have a touch point with us. We're here for you. We're here to do the work to make sure that you guys have your best work life. We're here to support you, get the training that you need, the information that you need. But also we're here so you can feel more at home in talking to us one-on-one if you have an issue or you want coaching. We got you. So I think it's funny when people are like, ombuds for faculty, what's similar? Be like, us. But it doesn't really exist in a lot of other HRs. They do have ombuds, which is one person like that you can go to. Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna talk again. That was my question though. So I know like for ombuds, sometimes it's like if two faculty members are having like some type of a issue that they're having trouble getting past, then there's like facilitation in that relationship. So HR does that. Like if I was having something similar with my supervisor. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
How many of us, that's good to know. Thanks.
How many of us did mediation training?
Okay.
Wasn't it?
That's the word I was thinking of.
I want to say that there, in your HR, more than half of the like employee relations and even some of the welcome team got, and myself included, got to participate in mediation training. So we've got that skill set.
That's great.
If anybody ever wants to have a coaching conversation or feels like they need to have more of a facilitated conversation, that's what your growth team is for. Tiffany Trader loves it when I call her out. I'm just going to make her wave. Just wave. Thanks, babe. Oh, I'm being recorded. Thanks, lady. I'll edit that out. Anyways, so Tiffany Trader is the head of our growth team. So that's employee relations. But yeah, we live for that because it's often just finding how to have those crucial conversations and how to balance those questions. Okay, so I've answered some of your questions that came in direct message. Chat with us. We're here for you. Send us an email. We'd love to facilitate more of those strategic conversations, more of those difficult conversations. Okay, somebody sent me some really cool quotes about boundaries because that is our topic. I'm gonna read them and then we're gonna talk a little bit more about boundaries in the last 15 minutes. Okay, some of my favorite quotes on boundaries. Givers must set boundaries because takers never will. Anybody know? Anybody want to like, yes, just raise your hand or throw out an emoji. You know that. You have been taken advantage of because every single one of you on this call, you're in this line of work because you have a giving personality, you have a building personality, you have a growth mindset. There's a reason why you went into the service industry. Yeah, we're in public service. We're givers, and givers will give until they have nothing left to give. I will tell you every single day, you cannot fill from an empty cup. You got to fill back up your cup, or fill your bucket, fill your cup, however you want to say it. You just can't. It doesn't work. There was also this other quote. It is not necessary to set yourself on fire to keep everyone else warm. Oh my gosh, right? Oh, I need to have that written somewhere where I can read it every single day. Because how many of us, I saw this beautiful quote, and I'm going to include it in the recap. And it was, we have to dismantle this culture of the grind. We have to stop glorifying 12-hour days, not taking our personal time, not taking sick time. It's not healthy. It's a bad expectation that we set for ourselves. It's a bad expectation that we set for our colleagues. And it's an awful expectation that we set for our children. And our children are watching our every move right now in COVID. They are with us far more than they ever have been. We cannot let the next generation think that burnout and this grind and this work culture of nasty, taking advantage of humans who are humans. We're not numbers in a system. We're not assembly line robots. We're humans. I had this really fantastic conversation, and your HR team will be presenting to the Oregon Coupa conference. Actually, first full week in April. We got to get going on that presentation. But our group got together, and we were talking about employee engagement, and we're talking about what we want to share. And there was this point in time where we needed to acknowledge the COVID angle to employee engagement and the vulnerability that COVID has put us in. And it really has broke the fourth wall. You used to come to campus and you were your person and you did your work and everybody knew you for your work. Now we've broke that. We've broke that whole model. We see Maggie holding her baby on a call. We see Stephanie in her living room, existing in real life. We sometimes put up an awesome Boise State background. By the way, Christine, that's a fantastic background. So we can try to emulate that fourth wall, but it doesn't really exist. It's already been broken. We're in a play where the characters have broken the fourth wall and we just have to keep going with it. You see me most weeks as not only a Boise State employee facilitating a conversation, but you see me homeschooling my kids and telling them to not scream at each other. And occasionally you get to witness a tantrum, which then means that you get to see me parent through one of the most embarrassing things that you can. There's a reason why the mom at Winco puts her kid in the cart and jets out of the store when the kid is having a tantrum, because no one wants to be in that situation. I get to live it 5 days a week and work. A lot of you do too. This is hard. This is weird. We cannot unbreak that fourth wall. Yeah, and students are doing it too. Oh my gosh. I can't. Yeah, so we need to acknowledge how hard this is. And we need to start setting boundaries for our own safety and our own health. And that's one of the reasons why I let you guys see me parent, because I can't not acknowledge that they're there. We've been forced into a state of authenticity like no one has seen before. And part of that is owning that it exists and you're never going to go back until we're in person and you can escape from it every once in a while. For those of you who get to go to campus, I'm so jealous. Tiffany, I want to go hide in your office. Actually, not today. I don't have my kids today. My mother's wonderful. She took my kids. Okay, I once saw my friend stand in the produce section calmly watching her daughters have a major tantrum on the floor until her child quieted down and then calmly went on shopping. Yes, that's my nightmare. But it's weird. It's like why when students see their teachers out of context, you're like, oh, they're real humans. We can never go back to knowing that we're real humans. And that's why these boundaries are super important. I'm jealous. I'm always ruffled by my children's tantrums. So when I am talking about setting boundaries, I'm really leaving you guys with some homework to do some self-awareness and know that we have people in HR who are available, willing, and just like waiting for people to come and talk to them about how to set better habits. You don't have to do this journey alone. If you're struggling with a certain thing, we've got Jerry Mizrahi in career services. I take a strengths approach to things. We've got employee relations people, and then we just have people who are interested in coaching and wellness. So shoot us an email. We'd love to help you. It's not just an hour together, because this hour together is fantastic because you guys just let me yammer for a whole hour, which is cool. But that's not going to be the work. You got to build up the baby pudge. I say that because my baby boy is 18 months old and he's like just starting to get those, like, his doesn't have wrists anymore. It just has lines of demarcation. Okay, I'm going to be quiet for a little bit. We've got 10 minutes left in this hour. I'm going to stay on the line if anybody else wants to talk about how they've set some boundaries for themselves, how they've seen other people set boundaries, and we can just be chatty together. Or if you want to private chat anybody of your HR team, we're all here for you. This is your time. I will say that next time we have Ace joining the Fireside to talk about the Association of Classified Employees, and we're super excited to have them there. Most of April is available. If you know of an informational topic, if you have a request for our pulse check in April, let's talk about it.
I have a topic.
Yeah. What do you got for me?
Could you help us find out, we as managers, when are we going to be allowed to start? When is this no hiring? When is the hiring freeze going to end? Because part of my whole horrible part of my life is I have a supervisor who retired, so I now have way too many employees I'm taking care of, and I desperately would like to be able to rehire that position. So,
Jordy, I think you need to.
There's a topic. And also bring back other people. Actually, we're in a complete hiring freeze at DPS, so.
Yeah. My only comment to that would be that we're not aware of when or if a hiring freeze will lift. But if that does change, we will definitely communicate that to campus. I will say that hiring activity has been extremely busy for the last several months. So, but it depends on what part of campus you're talking about too, and what kind of positions and what time of the year it is, and a lot of other dependencies. But yeah, so until we are notified that a hiring freeze will be lifted or changed, we're kind of sticking with the status quo. So
is that a question I need to bring up with my AVP then, and not you guys?
That's one.
Yes.
So
I would say.
Jordy, correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to the hiring freeze, positions have to be approved up through the AVP and the VP before they bypass the hiring freeze.
Typically, yes. And I say typically because it may vary depending on whether a certain VP has delegated their approval to others who report to them. So that does occur sometimes when we say you must get VP approval or provost approval. There may be cases where they say, okay, for this division or this unit, I'm delegating my approval responsibility to this individual, and that may work for that unit or that department. So we're not controlling that. We're not saying no, you have to follow the general guidelines. We're just, we started with it requires VP provost approval, and then from there, those areas have the freedom to set up, alternate approval requirements based on their business, their leadership, their, how they do things.
There's no cut and dry answer when we report up through DHR and weird bureaucratic, fail stops. Christine, if we need to, let's try to meet with the welcome team offline and see what needs you have and what we can do to work with you, though.
Yeah, I have a bunch of new people in charge of everything and don't know where to go.
Well, it's like one of those things where it's worth the conversation of, we have skill gaps, we've got things that need to happen, and we just need to get curious about how we can get things done. And I'll tell you, Jordy and his fantastic team are so good at getting curious and figuring out how to help people. I give him a big head every once in a while when I talk him up.
Yeah. What's one of the things I thought was good, this topic of this call is really interesting, and the other side of the coin is okay, we need to fight and protect our boundaries, right? The other thing that's hard to do, sometimes harder, is to catch yourself. I know I struggle with this sometimes. When someone else may be pushing back again to me saying, I don't have time to do that, or that's going to be next week, moment where I'm like, oh, this doesn't work for me. It's hold on a second here. I want people to respect my boundaries. I also have to respect other people's boundaries. And so it's kind of it's interesting. I think you have to keep both mindsets, and be communicative and approach people with some flexibility and some respect for their schedules, and really think, is this really an emergency? Do I need to talk to my leadership or that other department, say, hey, could we maybe have a couple extra days here? I've got a really busy staff. Here's what we're dealing with. Is there any possibility? Oh, sure, yeah. Or they might say, absolutely not. It is an emergency, and here's why. So you kind of have to have that dual mindset of, I want my boundaries respected, but I also need to catch myself when I get frustrated with other people's boundaries.
It's so important. Okay, so I love how Maggie just talked about how she handles boundaries for herself. And Jordy's like, this is how, as a leader, I help my team. I set boundaries for my team. That's important too, to acknowledge. I didn't acknowledge that yet. As leaders of groups, we have to be protective of our people. And we also have to be curious about the service that we're providing to others. So I'll apply all the rules I just told you about yourself, and now you can also apply it to your team. Sorry. I love it when you can teach a lesson and it applies to multiple things, because it just means that you can be so much smarter and healthier. I'm a nerd about all this. I don't know if anybody noticed that. Jordy laughs at me, but he gets to laugh at me all the time. He works with me every day.
Every day.
Well, I appreciate everybody who stayed on. It is right at the noon hour. I just absolutely adore that we had almost the same amount of participation on a pulse check that we do on an informational, that gives me a lot of hope that this signifies to me that these are important to you guys. So I will keep up a monthly pulse check. And if I can, I'll bring in some experts because my knowledge is all self-learned and from being a coach. And don't have a counseling degree, though I thought about it. So if I can get the counseling services people back in, that'd be cool too. Thanks everybody for being here.